the need to address the issues and the requirements of a larger group of people, not just for some, but for all. But that has to be in the context of what is the environment that the Ministry of Urban Development is looking to create, which facilitates all of these to be included. And I think that that bigger picture is what I wanted to quickly lay a context on, so that this case study is actually of a affordable housing unit, which is in Bangalore, which is located in Bangalore. It is located in the south of Bangalore in a place called Anikal. So the reason this parcel of land was finally picked was because this seemed like it had the best titles and best, not titles because we don't have titles, but the best papers, legal papers that proved the ownership. I'm just going to look at that one thing, which is all I've put here. That essentially, the owner was Junjunappa, which is right at the top. His wife is a woman called Muniyamma. And they have 3 children. They had Puttamma. Below them, they have a whole bunch of other children and their children and then their great-grandchildren. So this is the tree. 20 people in that 5 acres and 2 gundas of land. This all had to be put together. What were the documents that were used to actually prove this ownership and how much you own? There were 4 kinds. There were 3 kinds. The first is what are the taxes that have been paid on this land? That's one evidence. The other is by being listed and surveyed by the Revenue Department. And the third is any kind of transaction deed. So if the owner has a deed, then that's the one that they see. In this instance, of course, being listed and surveyed, paid taxes on land was not even a concern. Therefore, the documents that were available, Junjunappa, it was an ancestral land. There was no deed at all to even say that he owned it in the first place. The reality of this was, it was a nightmare, just figuring out who the owners are, what it is, what's the boundaries, etc. If you looked at it, not all owners actually held a clear and marketable deed of any kind on this land. There were unanticipated claimants. What they ended up doing, this company, was took all of the potential legal claimants, 20 of them, and brought them in, including the third daughter, Puttamma, and her children and her grandchildren. Brought everybody in. Some of them who actually were legal owners didn't have the documents, and some of them who had the documents weren't listed in the revenue record. They found one piece of land which was apparently a kharab land, which had no land use, which was essentially a common property. But this is the political things. What we have distortions in land market valuations. The fact that this company actually went to this piece of land, which was further flung than pieces that were close by, which didn't have this kind of clarity on the ownership and the extents, shows you how the land market valuations and land markets themselves get impacted by this lack of clarity. And this is because ownership is presumed, extents are presumed, rights are presumed. There are an increasing number of legal disputes, and the count is that it's 80%. You've got Barun, who has actually written about this, and the informal statutory, the legal fraternity has come out and said it's close to 80% of our civil courts are clogged with. Some of you might have already known this is the Torrance principles. There are 3 principles. There's the curtain, mirror, and insurance. This is the basic premise. And throughout the world, wherever there are people or countries who have actually adopted title, have some parts and some measures of this in some form or the other. We have to understand what are the challenges of rural, because are we looking at rural? Urban is very different. Processes of surveying, of records, everything is different between urban and rural. So understanding those processes, the institutional structures which are embedded in each of these. So we need to bridge that gap and bring it as close as possible. The devil's really in the details. I think while we've moved beyond the why, the how becomes very important. We're looking at federal laws which are actually contrary to what we want to do. And process changes. The enabling technologies, the surveying, the GIS, we talked about the cadastral system. All of these actually have to come together in a manner that allows this kind of transaction, high volume, high scale, to be managed in an efficient way. It's going to take time. Somebody mentioned that in the morning. In 1997, look at the volumes. The number of investor accounts is a minuscule 0.0027 accounts, and you had a value of securities of $1 billion. In 10 years is what it has taken. You look at it now, you've got over 75% that is in this system, and you have a value of your securities which is over $1 trillion. Platinum is indeed a very ambitious sort of project that the Government of India, the Ministry of Urban Development, has been nurturing and trying to figure out. And I've been part of some of that, grappling with the challenges, wondering how states are going to do this. We said there are 3 aspects to what we're going to do in Project Platinum. The first is enable states. Let's do the thinkings, and in this we've actually been very ably supported by the Government of Andhra, some of the key people who actually implemented in Government of Andhra and Government of Karnataka and Government of Rajasthan, who have been with us in these deliberations to talk about the challenges at the state level. So one is to create those guidelines which include a framework law. The second is to create one pilot that the ministry will actually handhold, so that it's not just about theory, which is what Cesare was also alluding to. That is one thing to have, a theory of it, as with the ILD and Hernando de Soto, but the real challenge is in what you guys face in your states, is rolling up your sleeves and getting into the practice of it. And the challenges of implementation are very different. So I think at both levels, the spanning is important. So we are saying we'll do one pilot state. And the third is to create this enabling environment which continues this dialogue, sharing, exchanging, bringing experts, understanding how, moving the needle forward in as many ways as we can support you with. For the first time, you have 3 of the critical ministries who are actually seemingly looking in the same direction. The Ministry of Urban Development, of course, because it's one of the reform conditionalities that they have put in under their mission. But the Ministry of Housing and Urban Poverty Alleviation as well, with their array, part of what they want to do is say formalization of title, of tenure in these informal settlements. You can't have that. And I don't know if your Ministry of Rural Development has invested huge amounts. I mean, they have put out a project where they're looking at technology and saying, how can we do technology? And now they're beginning to say, hey, since we are enabling all the rural areas with this kind of land records and revenue electronification of revenue records, let's also see how we can link it to land title. So they have come out starting with a model act for guaranteed title, which is based on the tolerance system. But we have folded all of these initiatives into Platinum and all of these discussions into Platinum. Again, the inflection point, I believe that part of the inflection point is that we can't run away from the problem anymore. There is no more sweeping it under the carpet because of urbanization. The fact that, and because the land, the holdings are small, the transactions are frequent, there is economic impact, there is infrastructure impact, there is social provisioning which is impacted in urban areas. I think that urbanization is another very, very big inflection point for this reform. This is just to give you a sense. I mentioned earlier that this is interministerial. We have really, the ministry, hats off to them. They have taken every effort to make sure everybody who is involved, we get their input, we get challenged, the envelope is pushed further to bring everybody together and get their input, and that's what's been going on the last 6 months. We've been having meetings on everything, right from the framework law to the GIS, the surveying methodologies, what's the kind of technology, what's the kind of institutional structure. So this has been underway. I very quickly now want to end with a couple of slides on what we have done in Project Platinum. Essentially, we are saying that there are 4 registers that will be created. It begins with a notification of an area. So if you have Delhi over here, or take any of your own cities, you actually divide it into certain parts. And you say, we notify this particular area. Obviously, you've got to have your framework law in place first. So you would have actually looked at your laws, seen what you want to do, whether you want to harmonize existing acts or whether you want to create a new act. But then you begin the process of implementation. Thing which is related to that piece of land then moves into a system of title, which means all disputes which are on that land are recorded through another register. All charges and covenants, which is mortgages, etc., any liens, any of that, that is also listed. To give you a quick sense of it, we are suggesting that there should be a land title authority which is set up, which has a members, which has a chairperson, but this is to do with land. All issues on land are then vested on title, is vested with this land title authority. There are 3 divisions to each is headed by a director. One, Land Information Systems and Survey and Settlement. The second is the Title Registry itself, the Director of Title Registry. And then the Division of Legal Services and Title Guarantee, who makes sure that any kind of tribunal processes that have to be addressed or any indemnity that is brought forward is done this. Request is, if you can use this month of December to look at that law, give us your input. We will be delighted.